Hello there everyone, Inky Fingers here from Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Now today I'm going to paint everyone's favourite, Lott's Cottage, made famous by John Constable in the Hay Wain. Probably is one of his most famous pictures. Now we can see I've already done the drawing, and the drawing came from this picture. A nice close-up view of the cottage with some nice foliage. But before we start, I just want to show you something that I do sometimes to make light of what I'm looking at a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more simpler to understand when in terms of the tonal values and such. Now, I'd just like to start this video just to show something I like doing. I don't do this all the time, but it is a handy thing to do. Is that, as you can see, we have Lott's Cottage on the screen, and this is of course going to be our picture of the day. But when you look at this picture, we have, especially because we've got foliage around it and foliage around here, and we've got some riverbank, some complicated looking reeds and such, it can overpower the picture a little bit. So normally what we would do in this sort of situation is we could half screw our eyes up, and of course what that does is it knocks out the midtones of the picture, so you just see more light and dark, and it can simplify the picture a lot because you're just sort of seeing more light and dark shapes than an actual overall picture, as we can see here. Because we've pretty much all got computers, we can use any image manipulation software. So what we're going to do, what we can do is we'll have a look at this. As I said, normally you half screw your eyes up so you can see the lights and darks, but on a computer we can just blur the image out a bit, and that will do the same job. So this is the normal view, and then we can blur it out in the software. This is a Gaussian blur, and we can now see that everything is much less complicated. It's much simpler to look at things. I mean, all the detail is gone from the foliage, and we can just see more lights and darks, the different colours. All of the foreground here is really simplified, and you can just sort of see shadows a little bit easier. Go back to this the original. Look at this part of the picture here, just above the chimney. Look how easy this is to work out what's happening. So that's a very good way to sort of have a look at a picture. But we can go one further step and take this defocused picture. So now what we can do is we can desaturate it, and we get something like this. So now because we've taken all the color value out and we're just looking at basically grayscale, again it makes it easier to decipher. So we've got a little bit of mid-tone there, we've got dark, we've got some light tones there, a little bit of dark. We've got, look at this area here, very dark against the light side of the wall. You can see it there, but it's not that prominent, much more prominent in the desaturated version. This is much easier to work out. So once you can work out tonal values, it's much easier to work out what you're going to do with the color. So that's it. I do like to use this now and again, so I thought I'd just show you what, if you've got a computer, what you can do, and it saves screwing your eyes up and getting wrinkles in your forehead. So now let's get back to the picture. So now we're back. Let's get this picture painted. Now what's nice about this picture is that it's got some lovely bright yellows, some mid-greens, some dark greens. You got the whole gamut really. Lott's Cottage of course has got this red tiled roof, and it goes well against the green foliage, and we have a nice little bit of water there with a little bit of reflection. Now this picture, looking at the sky, we've got this lovely sort of more light blue sky. So I've bought a new tube of paint. It just came today, and it is another Jackman's from Jackson's Art Materials. This is Cerulean Blue 2, and 14mm tube, and it's one of the, again, all Jackman colours are pretty much quite heavy granulating, and the pigment is Cerulean Blue, the classic PB 35. So this should be a very, very nice colour. And I'm going to use that for the sky for the first time. Haven't opened the tube yet. Before we do the painting, there's something I did forget, and it's quite important, is that in the picture we have a little bit of a fence here. So I'm just going to put some masking fluid on this fence, and we're going to quite simplify the foreground here, but I think I will have a few little light flecks of reeds here and there. So to do that, I'm just using a ruling pen, which you can see we've got masking fluid in, and ruling pens are just something that we can change the width of the two prongs to quite wide to very, very narrow, and we want this very narrow because reeds are very narrow. So we'll try that. Then you just dip it in the masking fluid, take the excess off, and then you should be good to go. So all we need to do is put some masking fluid, and I'll just go all across the picture using this method. As I said, I'm going to try this new colour out. I put a little bit out onto this palette. Lovely colour, isn't it? Now, I don't want this strong, as it's a very granulating colour. It's more, it'd be better off if it is quite weak. So here's the colour, and I'm just going to apply it to the sky on dry paper. I'm not going to put a wash. Now this is either Ash or is Langton Prestige. I'm not really too sure, but it's a rough 100% rag paper. So to do this, I'm just going to start and put some paint. Now there's no masking fluid up here, so I've got to be a little bit careful. So I've got a tree here, I've got a tree here, so I don't want to go over that. I've got some trees here, so I just want to go down, and then a damp brush, and then just pull that paint down into the trees. So it's going to slightly tint them, but that doesn't matter. Same with here. Damp brush, pull it down into this tree. I'll just put a tiny little bit of very dilute paint here. Bit more water. Pull it down so it's getting more dilute and more dilute. I'll do the same here. Now why am I doing it here? A little bit of paint there. Now this is of course going over the tree, but why am I doing this? Well, simply because if we leave any gaps in the foliage, more clean water going on, we're going to have a little bit of blue shown through. But as you can see, because I'm actually pulling it down with clean water all the time, there's some more clean water going on, it's becoming incredibly dilute, so it's not going to affect the colours underneath. And I think that'll do. Now we can see the granulation already. I think I might like this colour. And there we go. So there's the sky completed. The sky is still a little bit wet. It's taken a lot longer than I thought, and I don't want to put a hairdryer on, and some of the masking fluid is a little bit thick in places just on this fence, so that's still a bit gungy. So we do not want to put a nice sable brush or any brush over wet masking fluid. It's just going to ruin your brush. So what we can do, and we can do the trees later on, but we can put a wash of colour on the roof, because the roof is just such a gorgeous colour. You can see this is burnt sienna and yellow ochre, and the brickwork, so we can do that. So I've just mixed it up some. This is basically burnt sienna. All we need to do here is just to simply paint in this lovely, just being a little bit careful so it doesn't go into the roof. Just paint it in. We go across here. I'm going across, always across, because if I leave any gaps, and this is rough paper like this, then that could be the start of some tiles or a little bit of detail. And then into this, I'm going to put in a little bit of, this is just burnt umber, and I think a touch of cobalt blue. Ooh, that's a bit much. That's too much, so a little bit more burnt umber, just so as you can see it knocks it down to a nice sort of brownish colour. And here and there I'm just going to take most of the paint off the brush and just blend in a little bit of this brown here and there, just so it looks like there's some dirt on the tiles. And we're not going to have this just monotonous orangey red roof. So I just tap that in, something like that. So it just makes it a little bit more interesting. Right, we're back again. So now it's all dried at the back. We can fill these big blank areas in and stick some trees in. Now I'm going to start with the left hand side. So we have this tree, this nice yellow tree, and it goes down into some sort of a mid green, and then it goes into something here. Now this is just printed out on just normal copier paper, so it's not really high definition. You can't really see, it just goes into a muddy, messy blur. So we'll have to improvise with this, but it does mean we keep it simple. Now to paint this, I'm going to use just the number 4 rigger, a Kolinsky Sable Winsor & Newton rigger, because this is rough paper and it's not a large tree. So what I can do is I can do some dry brush to simulate the effect of the roughness at the top of the tree. If I used a larger brush, then it's just going to flood the area with paint and it's just going to be probably more flat looking. And what colours have I used? Well, I've used, this is just yellow. This is Azio Yellow Light, sort of a lemon yellow type of colour. And this is Azio Yellow Light with some Jade Green, that Jackman's colour, which is also a bit granulating, but only a little bit of Jade Green in this. So we've got a light, it's going to be a light colour, sunlit colour for the leaves, and then we've got a medium tone. And then we could maybe put some more dark into this as we go down the picture into the shadow areas. So we'll see what happens. So we'll go into the yellow, and I'm just going to using a flat brush, the flat hold that my hand is right to the back, and I've got the brush flat and I'm just scraping the paper. And I've got my hand at the back of the brush, so if I put it down here I may be pushing on the paper too much. So just pull that across. Now we've got some gaps here. As I said earlier on, if you leave any gaps you get a little bit of blue, so we see the sky. Leave some holes so the birds can fly through. And also we can leave some gaps so we can put a tree trunk to make it look like a tree. Right, I'll just put that there. Now I'm going to go straight into the green and this mid green. Put a little bit there. Just let it spread up, blend up. I'll just go down, and then as I get down I'm going to put some more green in straight out the pan. This is the same green I've just used for this, that jade green. This is just out of the pan now, so it's going to be darker. Cut into this for the edge of the house. And I think I may just leave this here, so we could maybe perhaps put a bush there. I'll just put a little, drop some of this here and there. Just let it all blend in. Something like that, and then we just go pretty much straight into this nice yellow tree here. So I've got this here, so it's a bit larger tree, so I can be a little bit more brave. Go around this. I'm going to just go into a green and do the same thing with this tree. Now this tree has got a little bit more green to it, so I've just put some of the jade green into the this mix, and I'll just roughly dry brush this tree in. Put that. See? Dark there, needs to be dark there. I'll just leave a little gap there because that's where a tree trunk is. Right, and while I'm here I shall just drop some of this colour just to the left, just so it's going to now separate this tree from that tree. We can paint in this brickwork. Now the brickwork is the same colours I'm going to use for this for the roof. I've just put a little bit more water in, so it's a touch more diluted, so it's a little bit lighter, just to make a difference between the roof and the chimney or the brickwork. Now I've got to be this is damp, so I've got to be very careful here. So what we can do is paint in this foreground, all of the reeds and the grass. So with these colours I'm using exactly the same colours I've used with everything else. There's a very minimal colour picture this to try and keep some colour harmony. So for this area, this again is just the Azio yellow light and a touch of the jade green. So it is quite a light green. And then as I go along I'll just slightly darken it up as we go along, as it does get darker and changes to a different type of green. Sable, Winsor & Newton Kalinsky sable, holds loads of water, especially just for this smaller area. Drop in some darker colour, again just dropping in some jade green just in the bottom, the bottom part, so that's where obviously probably more of the shadow would be, and it gets lighter at the top. I'm going to change the colour and I'm going to put in some green quartz. This is a Rosa colour, granulating colour, because it does change considerably around here to a darker green. And then in that I'm just going to drop some water and just pull it out, so I don't want it that dark at this moment in time. There's actually a bush there, so I'll go back into this much yellower paint again. Just drop that in so it's not like a monotonous monotone type colour. And then so it looks like there's some sunshine coming there, and then we get into this darker area, and I will drop the colour I've just used for that here and there in the very bottom, just to simulate that extra bit of darkness. So I'm not going to be doing too much with the foreground. It's far too bitty in the photograph. I'm just going by what I showed you in when you saw the colour version of the blurred out picture. So now this picture is pretty much all dry. All I did while you were away was I put a little bit of the Jade green and a touch of French Ultramarine blue to darken it down. The small brush just made the bottoms of these reeds a little bit darker, so you can see it looks more like it's in shadow going up to the sunlight. I put just a blob of green here because that's where I said we could put a bush or something, and I just dropped in a little bit of, when it was still damp, the colour I put here just along the bottom, just to make it look like it's not flat, it sort of goes around a little bit, so a little bit of height. So now we need to get rid of this horrible white area, which of course is the reflection. Well, they will have reflections in, it's just going to be the water. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some reflections in, because you can see here that I have put a few faint pencil lines. So that there is this part of the building, that's that part, that's that part, just so we can line things up, because one thing you do with reflections is you've got to make sure that you line things up. It's no good if you have the reflection of this over here. Sounds silly, but it can happen. So what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm just going to use a weak wash and paint in the reflection of chimney stack. So I want it weak because I want it, as it is a reflection, so I just don't want it as dark. And I can just really just do that so it's not even, so it looks like it's a slight ripple in the water. A bit there, and then I'll do the same thing for these reeds. Always do it horizontally, because water is horizontal, of course, and try to do it level. Don't do it on an angle. Again, it's easy to do, but try not to do it on an angle. If you do, it's going to make it look like the water is going uphill, which we cannot have. I'll just do a little bit, and then I'll go into a bit of a darker green, and then just drop that in, just so we have the reflection of the darker areas. Now while this is drying, we can go into the trees again, because they do need some extra tone. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to mix, well, this is Azio yellow light again, the colour I did here. This is just the Jade green and some Azio yellow light put in, so it's a more of a mid-tone. And all I'm going to do is to glaze over parts of this just to make it a little bit stronger in colour and tone. So I'll start off with this yellow. I'll just dab it in. Now the sun's coming from the right, remember, so we'll have, this is just going to emphasise the sunlit areas of this tree. And I'll also do the same on parts of this tree. Now Azio yellow light is a transparent colour, so it goes well with glazes, so we'll just do that there. A little bit, just a touch on there, and then into this other colour. And we'll just put it in here and there where we want. This is just some of the Jade green, just to darken that up. And what I've done here, I've left, you may see, I've painted here, painted there, and I've left a little gap. There's another tiny little gap there, and what we can, negative painting, so what we can have here is that can now be another tree trunk but further off in the distance. Now all I've done while you've been away is I've added a few more little ripples of darker green paint to the water, just to make it look like it's got a little bit of movement on this darker bush here, and a few little ripples here. And of course I've just put a few darker areas, just dropped in while it was wet and wet. Again, this is just Jade green and a bit of French Ultramarine to darken it up. Made it a bit darker down here, so we've got the light against dark, and it makes this tree trunk, this negative painting tree trunk, stand out a bit more. And I've just put a little bit of burnt umber into the mix I used for the roof, and I've just put the top ridge tile roof tiles a little bit darker. Now the whole picture it's got paint on. The thing I do next, I think, is to work on the house, because we need windows in for a start, and then we need shading our shadows in, which, because it's very, very flat at the moment, because even the dark down here are not very dark. So once we get the shadows in, it's going to make it really pop. But I want to put these windows in first, so I'm just going to mix a little bit of neutral tint and put some French Ultramarine, so it gives this lovely sort of dark colour. We can look carefully at the photograph, because we can see I'm not going to paint window frames in. I'm just going to paint in the actual windows themselves, and hopefully it can leave a little negative gap like so. There's one window. Now these windows are now dry, so now it's the scary bit. Now it's time to put a nice dark shadow on the left hand side of this building. Now for the shadow colours, I quite like using French Ultramarine and light red. That gives you this colour. It's a rather nice slate blue. Take a deep breath and let's see what we can do. So the sun's coming from this angle, so we've got everything on this side is going to be in shadow. Now this looks very dark, isn't it? But it will dry lighter. Bags of water. This is a number 5 sable, so it holds lots of water. We don't want to do this dry, because if we do, then it's going to disturb these washes underneath and we'll have problems. So now we have this side of the chimney is in shadow all the way down there, and we have a shadow of the chimney itself on the roof. Taking careful note of where everything else is in the photograph, and then that comes down something like that. And then that sort of comes down there like so. That's all that is in shadow. We can go over this. We can see where the masking fluid for this little fence is now. You're going to have a shadow under the eaves there. You're going to have a shadow under the eaves here. Then this is in shadow. That's going to cast a shadow onto there. It's always good to talk to yourself when you do these things, because if you talk to yourself, you're asking yourself questions. Now really, a lot of this is also in shadow, so all of that's in shadow there. There's some sort of shadow going across there. Back in, I used all the paint in the brush, so I do not want to scrub this, otherwise it'll make it nasty. You're going to have, that's going to be in shadow, just have a little bit there. Just let's put a little bit of dark with this unifying shadow colour just in the base of the reeds. So when we take this masking fluid off, it's going to be nice and dark. I'll put a little bit of dark as that, or well, it's a lighter bush in the photograph. It's got red all over it, but I want to make it a darker bush. Again, dark against light. Now it's all dry. I've just got a little bit of burnt umber with a little bit of French Ultramarine blue, and I'm just putting in this tree, or this tree trunk. Just a few little tiny just to make it look like there's some trees in the background. Now we've got the water here. We've got some tones on, we've got some reflections on. But what I always like to do is, once all of this is done, I get some blue. In this case is going to be cobalt blue. On that I'm just going to basically paint over everything, so it gives it that bluish tone. So look, it's going to make it look like, hopefully, that it's going to be basically the reflection of the sky. It gives the water a little bit of blueness, and then when that's all dry, I can get a little bit of white ink or something and just put a few little ripples, highlight speckles in the water to make it to make it, to finish it off. Now it's time to put a little bit of pen on. As this is a pen and inky channel, we need a little bit of we leave a little bit bland, so we can put a little bit of pen to define the center of interest, which is of course the cottage. So this is just a 0.3 uni pin, and let's see. It's a little bit dry, this pen, which is quite nice. As it drags across this rough paper, and we just make a few little marks. We had a few little tiles in. Well, the inference of some tiles. Right, now what we need to do, the final things, is to use a little bit of ink, and as I said, I'm going to put some highlights into the water. So it's just a few, maybe this is a little bit too big a brush. We'll just emphasize some of this, the highlight white on the walls. We'll just do some little bits and bobs. Just to make it look like there's some light shining, or there's little bits floating about on the actual surface of the water. Now works, of course, it works especially good where it's darker. And with those little bits of light in the water, just gives that little bit of reflection from the sky, something. I think that might be done. So let's take the masking tape off and see what we've got. And so that's it. That's the finished piece. It's a nice little pen and wash of Lott's cottage. We have some distant trees in the sunshine, made with Azio yellow light and a touch of green. We've got some much distant bluey trees in the distance, and then some more trees just similar to these, and as we go closer we get darker with a little bit more detail, but not real detail there because we want to keep them in the distance. The foreground here, it's been much reduced in detail compared to the photograph. I just, all these white areas left with masking fluid, I just put a glaze of Naples yellow just to knock them down and get the whiteness off. The water, just, I think it looks like water. The blue wash we put on sort of pushes everything into the water itself, and then just those few little speckles of white ink, just again to give something, make the water flat. And the house itself, again, is nothing much with the house, because Lott's cottage is just really pretty much a whitewashed walled house with a red tile roof. There isn't any detail or texture as such. So, but the shadows are nice. The pen, just putting there's some hints at lines to hint at the tiles. That's all we need on there. There isn't any tiles actually on there. And I like the Cerulean Blue too, that new colour from Jacksmans, sorry. And you can see it's quite granular. So I quite like that. It's just a nice, my illustrative style. Punchy, bold. And I hope you enjoyed watching me paint it. Now if you did enjoy watching me paint this house, then and you would like to see some more of this type of thing, then if you haven't subscribed, then I would very much appreciate it if you subscribed. It's all free. And leave a comment, because the comments do help the channel. And I'll say until next time, until we do something, I'll see you then. So goodbye.